G'day, welcome to Blue Sky Factory's presentation of Prepare to Prosper. Are you ready for the great wealth transfer? What on earth am I talking about? It's one of the most exciting times in history that's being presented right now, where I believe that this is not something that happens every few years or tens of years. This is like generationally. This is massive. Let's dive in, have a look. Derek Whitaker is my name, founder of the Blue Sky Factory. Quick disclaimer, Blue Sky Factory is not a licensed financial planning, accounting or law firm. Simply an education company to give you factual information, not advice. We do not give any general specific advice on finance, business, investing, options, trading, accounting, cryptocurrency, precious metals or anything else. Investing and trading carry risk, including the risk of loss. For specific advice to your situation, please see a licensed financial planner, accountant or lawyer when it comes to that kind of advice that you need. Now, I just want to say this too. I might be mentioning a few assets moving forward. These are not recommendations to buy these or sell these. We're just simply reporting what's going on. The whole premise starts on this, on the terms of a wealth transfer. Look at this. It's embedded in this ancient scripture. A good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous. Now, this really dives into a transfer. Look at that. A sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous. Okay, so in other words, it's going to transfer from the sinner's wealth or the wicked to the righteous. What's really interesting too is a money management perspective. I don't believe in the baby boomers' premise of I'm going to spend the kids' inheritance, because a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children. So the question I want to pose to you today is, do you get the sense that something isn't quite right? I recently had a friend call me that, and they look, I just can't put my finger on it. I know this isn't right, and this is going on in the world's economies, but what is it? You know, the world financially is in a very precarious position, but knowing what to do about it is the hardest part in all of this. And so this leads me to this point, with the day I found out my money wasn't actually mine, and it's why I built this course. Let me explain. In the space of a few years, the rules about money, movement, and speech changed faster than most of us thought was possible. I mean, you'll remember these three things that we thought were unthinkable until they weren't. In Canada of 2022, truckers had their personal bank accounts frozen during a protest. In Australia from 2021 to 2022, people faced a choice between their careers and their health, with mandates going on. In Victoria 2021, we saw a pregnant woman was arrested in her pajamas over a social media post. And I'm thinking the world's definitely changed. And you might be thinking, but Derek, that's so 2021 and 2022. Let's get with the times. Well, it happened to me personally. In 2023, I had my bank accounts frozen. Okay? Two of them I could understand. I had changed the governance in some of my entities, my accountant and I restructured, and one of my banks decided that meant overhauling everything rather than modifying the accounts I already had. And while that ran its course, I had to call clients and ask them to stop paying me until it was sorted. It was like, I'm never going to ask you this again, but please, can you stop paying me until I get this sorted? Now that one had a reason, those two incidences, but the next one didn't. The third one, I cleared every hoop they asked me to jump through, and they still froze my bank accounts. They wanted me to do the know your client rules. I went into the bank, to my personal banker, sat across from her, gave her all the documentation, signed the forms in front of her, had the other people that was involved in it, the trustees, sign it, submit their authorization and all that sort of stuff. I met every requirement they asked of me. I even had warning notices from the bank. They were automated saying, hey, if you don't get this sorted, we're going to close your bank accounts at a certain time. I rang them back. I said, hey, I just got this warning, but I've submitted the documents to my banker. What's going on? Don't worry about it, sir. It's okay. And then I kept getting these messages, and look, I'm trying to sort through it all. The outcome was the structure was frozen anyway. I even had one of the trustees fly in from overseas to identify themselves. The reason? Why did they freeze it? To this day, I have never been given a definitive answer on that. They also gave me the wrong banking details to pass it to a client in Europe at the time. And that error cost my client over €200. Not the best start to a new relationship with a client. And no one would take responsibility at the bank for it. They didn't want to know about it. And at the same time, my father passed away, my dad. 7 other people in my network died in the space of 3 to 4 months after my father passed away. I ended up going to about 6 to 7 funerals, had to do 2 eulogies, including one to my godfather's father, who was a good friend of mine. After the 7th person passed away in my network, I stopped counting. I couldn't face it anymore. It's like, whatever, too hard. I was grieving, and I was leading my wife and children through that weird time, and having to still deal with the bank and the frozen bank account situation. Eventually, I filed a complaint with the Ombudsman. 6 months passed in that process, and I realized something I'd never had to think about. I'd built everything on the assumption that access to my own money was guaranteed. Well, guess what? It isn't. I started having crazy thoughts about how could I run a business without a bank and a bank account? How can I get around that process? Why is a middleman holding me in such array right now, particularly at such an inconvenient time? The silver lining in all this, it made me realize how much we take on trust. We're more reliant on banks as the custodians of our wealth than most of us have ever stopped to consider. So I started looking for ways to be less dependent on any single institution holding the keys. And now, I'd like to share my findings with you. What I was actually looking at. 2 questions, not one. The first question, can I reach it? Custody. Who actually holds the keys to what I own? And what happens on the day they say, no, you can't access it? The second question is it growing? The position, whether what I hold onto is placed where the money is going or where it has been. I don't want to just have money set aside in cash and it's eating away in terms of value because of inflation. I wanted the wealth to grow. So what do? Well, the vulnerability I found wasn't in my returns, it was in my access, but I still wanted the portfolio to grow while the money was on the move. I want my cake and eat it. Now, you don't take my word for it, all right? Look at these headlines and what they add up to. This is some and part of the discovery that I made. Start with a simple question. Which 2 cities have been the world's financial centers? London and New York. And what's happened between them over the few years, okay? This is reporting at the time. You see the article here, the 29th of January 2025. The New York Post, UK faces gold shortages as traders send $82 billion to New York in anticipation of Trump tariffs. You heard me talk about a wealth transfer. Look at this. London is facing a gold shortage after traders pulled out billions in bullion from the vaults of the Bank of England and stockpiled them in New York. All right, that's what was an unusual situation that was going on. And then CNN reported on the 7th of February 2025, gold withdrawal slots booked up at Bank of England over Trump's tariff threats. Waiting times to withdraw bullion from the Bank of England stretch from a few days to between 4 and 8 weeks. Extraordinary. I'm going, Look at the size of the move. 393 tons of gold moved into New York's COMEX vaults from November. All right, that's a 75% increase. Inventories rose to 926 tons, the highest since August 2022. And market participants believe more again had gone into private vaults in New York. Okay, this was extraordinary. This was unusual. This money being transferred, this wealth being transferred from one place to the next. The old money going out of London into New York. Now, the gold didn't change owners, it changed address. It went from London to New York. And that is what a wealth transfer looks like while it is still happening, all right? You're going, things that make you go, And the strain showed up in the price. What we saw was the London exchange with the COMEX. There was a disconnect going there, all right? We call this an arbitrage trade. On the 10th of October 2025, the same metal carried 2 different prices in 2 different cities on 2 different exchanges, all right? The COMEX silver futures, this is in the silver market, right, was at $48.10. On London spot, $50.10. These precious metals have got a $2 difference, and that $2 gap between 2 of the deepest markets in the world, gaps like that close quickly when metal can move freely, and this one didn't. And that's the crazy thing about the situation, okay? And you're going, okay, what's going on? And the rumors were that those bankers on the US exchange, the COMEX, were trying on the silver futures, were pushing the price down. They were wanting it to fall because they had short positions. In other words, they're selling before they're buying those positions. They're wanting the market to crash and come down, and been playing this game for ages on silver, while London has a shortage and is pushing the price up because, of course, when there is demand for something and low supply, the price goes up. So you had these arbitrage of two different prices going on at the same time for silver. It was bizarre. And then New York started to move. It was reported at the time, on the 12th of February 2025, the Office of Governor of Texas, the New York Stock Exchange announces New York Stock Exchange, Texas, a new exchange headquartered in Dallas. That was weird because you had a very blue state, right, with wealth going from a blue state politically to a red state in Texas moving, and you're going, as things were getting heated in New York, Texas is the most powerful economy in the nation, and now we will become the financial capital of America, said Governor Greg Abbott. And this is really interesting. You see how the money was moving. What was really interesting too about the silver at that time was the Shanghai exchange was saying, we'll pay a higher price than the silver spot was actually trading it as well, because they had all these manufacturing contracts they needed to fulfill. So you had all this weird stuff going on as far as gold prices were concerned, the silver prices concerned. And then in the same period, there's an announcement that wealth was moving from New York State exchange to Texas. And it was like, wow, 3 moves, one direction. And it did not stop with just one exchange, all right? The New York Stock Exchange, Texas, that was announced in February 2025, headquartered in Dallas. The NASDAQ Texas, a second Dallas listing venue, announced to follow. Then the Texas Stock Exchange, approved by the SEC on the 30th of September 2025, began live trading 10th of July 2026. Get that for a minute. A brand new national security exchange started trading in Dallas, a red state. This is extraordinary. You see this wealth transfer going on. Now, why is this a big deal? Because the US markets are the biggest economy in the world, all right? America's the biggest economy in the world. When it sneezes, the world feels it. And so when you've got money leaving the old exchanges in terms of precious metals, and then you've got Wall Street money moving out of that state onto a different exchange, and let's face it, electronically that's very easy to do these days, but it's quite telling as this wealth transfer unfolds. And underneath both of those are third move, not from one city to another, but out of the banking system altogether onto a second set of rails built alongside this. Get this. And it really started highlighting to me when I started seeing Trump on his campaign on Bitcoin 2024. He shows up at the conference and is announcing that he will fire Gary Gensler on the day he becomes president, and he was going to be a pro-crypto president. I was like, oh boy. Trump told the Bitcoin conference he wants America to be the crypto capital of the world. This was reported in July of 2024. He said, for too long, our government has violated the cardinal rule that every Bitcoiner knows by heart, never sell your Bitcoin. And he was really going to be the crypto capital. And in that, he also had Cynthia Lummis. Well, she shared the stage with him at the Bitcoin conference and announced herself as the Bitcoin senator. You could see these moves going on, and I looked at that and thought, oh my goodness, the financial system is going to change. Why was that significant? Because cryptocurrency from an investment perspective was always very speculative, and the thing that always was in my mind is, will a government ban it? Will they accept it or ban it? Accept it or ban it? And when I saw Trump starting to make those moves, I thought, now we have a government that's going to accept it. And not only a government, but the biggest economy in the world is going to legalize this. This is massive. And so we had 3 commitments made to a room of Bitcoiners, okay? You had the strategic reserve built from the Bitcoin the US government already held and not sold. So they had that going on. Then they had an advisory council with industry given a seat at the table on how the rules get written. And Trump was promising a new SEC chair, a change of leadership, the agency. They've been bringing the enforcement cases and trying to destroy cryptocurrency, which had happened under the Biden administration. If you want to watch the full speech, there's the QR code, the recorded address on the public record for you. Okay, and all these things are coming to play. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, the financial system is about to change forever. And then it started unfolding. 21st of November 2024, SEC Chair Gary Gensler departed the agency on January 20. He stepped down at midday on 20th of January 2025, the hour of the inauguration, after nearly 4 years as chair. And then we started to see the celebrations of the incoming administration. The crypto czar, David Sachs, he basically said this. Take a listen.
The reign of terror against crypto is over. And the beginning of innovation in America for crypto has just begun.
There you go. It was a new era, heralding it there. And very soon, 18th of July 2025, the Genius Act created the first federal framework for payment stablecoins, signed into law, where issuers must hold reserves of $1 for every token in cash or short-term treasuries and disclose those reserves every month. That was the first major part of legislation that was affecting cryptocurrencies called stablecoins, which are like a digital representation of fiat currency. So you can get like a USDT, which is a stable coin, which represents the US dollar. And so it meant that every issuer must hold reserves of $1 of every token. Now, this is significant because banks and central banks haven't typically behaved in this manner, okay, when it comes to fiat. They, especially the retail banks and that, can lend out more than's actually in their vault. We call it fractional reserve banking. But this is what changed: a dollar token issued by a company recognized in law. What was happening before? $1 in your hand or $1 in the bank. Those were the options with legal standing, okay? However, that necessarily didn't mean that the bank had every dollar in its vault. And after a federally regulated company can issue dollar-backed token fully reserved and audited monthly. Now that was a big one because it meant for the first time that it just wasn't the central bank that could issue currency, but a crypto company or a fintech company could issue currency. And the effect was that dollars can now sit and move outside a bank account without leaving the law. This was massive, all right? Now, these are back one for one, not created from nothing. And that distinction matters. It's often lost in the telling, okay? Whereas you can't just lend out money you don't have. These stablecoin companies had to have it backed in a vault somewhere. You just couldn't create these digital money out of thin air. That was massive as far as the Genius Act was concerned. So that is a second set of rails, and it runs alongside the banking system, not through it. Massive, massive change. And then, on the 4th of May 2026, banks moved to close the stablecoin yield provision in the Clarity Act. So we had the Genius Act, and then it moved on to the Clarity Act. The language permits exchanges and other crypto intermediaries to pay interest or yield for a user's participation in an exchange membership program. So what this meant was there was big debate, fight going on, right? Who's arguing for what? Over one clause of the Clarity Act. And it came down to Section 404. The Genius Act settled what a stablecoin is. The Clarity Act was in the process of deciding who supervises the wider digital asset market. And its Section 404 was a big one, whether a stablecoin balance is allowed to earn anything. The retail banks didn't want it. They wanted yield on stablecoins prohibited outright. Their concern was that money would leave their coffers and go onto the crypto exchanges. Their case is deposit flight. Banking research put to Congress claims consumer and small business and farm lending could fail by a fifth or more. The exchanges and fintechs were arguing this. They wanted to keep paying rewards on stablecoin balances. And the drafted text allowed rewards calculated by duration, balance, and tenure, which the banks say is the prohibition with the door left open. And that was the big argy-bargy that's going on behind closed doors. The banking wasn't united on either. Goldman Sachs, BNY, Morgan Stanley, been ready to accept the compromise. They don't hold the retail deposits that would walk. And this was a fight that was going on behind closed doors. Now read that argument again. It's not about technology. It's about where your money sits, who gets to use it while it sits there. That's huge, okay? None of this requires anyone to be a villain. Okay, let's just make that clear. But it's about control. And what it adds up to, and you put all of this together, you got the metal moving west out of London's vaults into New York's. You had the listings moving south out of New York towards Dallas. You had the rails moved out, a second dollar system built alongside the banks rather than inside them. And you had central banks, they kept buying and adding more and more gold reserves year after year after year. Something's up. None of this requires anyone to be a villain. Okay? It requires the system to work as designed. So you might be wondering, what does this have to do with your kitchen table? What does this have to do with you? And that's a fair question. Well, simply put, the quiet changes stated plainly. Let's have a look at what that is. The questions that are worth sitting with are this. Why? And according to my research, the banking system is quietly changing. You have to ask yourself, why are things around us happening like branches closing all around you? You notice they're getting fewer and fewer and fewer. It's harder to walk in and actually talk to a real person. The other question you need to kind of ask is ATMs. Why are they disappearing around the place? You really start have to thinking about, look, if I need cash, where am I going to get it from? And actually plan that way. And finally, digital only. There's no counter to walk up when something goes wrong with your money. It's harder to talk to someone. It's either get on the phone or talk to a chatbot or something like that. And so these are indicators to me that the banking system is quietly changing. Each one of its own is a business decision, but together they're describing a direction of where things are headed. Now, we also know about central bank digital currencies emerging on the scene. In fact, Australia has been quietly testing this in early 2026 with 3 of the 4 major banks. And some CBDC designs can support programmability, where it's spent on by when. And let me just explain what that means. So a central bank can issue its own digital coin. It's called a central bank digital currency and put it in a wallet. Some central bank research and pilot designs discuss programmable features or conditional payments. That means basically they can determine whether money expires by a certain time. And it puts into question, can an organization actually have, or an individual actually put savings aside? Will they have freedom to actually spend on things that they want to buy? Or an international or independent third body determine what can happen to the money that you earn? These are the kind of discussions that are circulating around CBDCs, and the exact powers would depend on the system, the law, and the policy adopted, and whether those policies are changed and laws change as we progress further into this space. The important question is not what every CBDC will do, it is what a future system could technically permit and what safeguards would apply. And that's the interesting discussion, particularly for Western countries. The groundwork is already laid. Identity is already attached to the account. In November 2022, every Australian company director was being required to hold a digital ID. Now, the framework to extend that further is being built. We already in place have a tax file number, Australian business number if you're running a business, and in some cases an Australian company number or ACN tied to accounts. We also had from the 1st of July 2026 the anti-money laundering wanting to know the identity of crypto wallets for individuals that are moving money off the exchanges into their own private wallets. Was it going there? Is it going to a different address? Is that address attached to that owner? None of this requires anyone to be a villain. It only requires the system to work as designed. And then the word at the center of all of this is the C word, custody. Custody is simply the answer to one question. Who holds the keys to your wealth? If they're held for you, we call that centralized, convenient, insured in parts, and it's dependent on the institution staying willing and able to service you and let you have access to your wealth. If it's held by you, well, fewer intermediaries, but the responsibility for security and record keeping sits with the holder. If you lose your funds, there's no one you can call. So, what happens here? Well, both of these, if you recognize them, carry risk. And the course that we're talking about covers what each one involves. So the choice is an informed one, not a default. And some may choose to do a bit of a hybrid of each. So there you go. It's all about choice. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. That's from the ancient book Proverbs 22 verse 3, and it's so pertinent for now. Are there any dangers ahead? The best time to plan for an emergency is when you're not having one. So the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and paying the penalty. And unfortunately, I see so many people in society right now just wanting to eat the coffee and cake and pretend everything's okay without planning for situations like I personally went through. Now, let me say this up front. It's not a doomsday prepper course, okay? It's not about fear. It's about, it's not about building bunkers. It's about being prepared. And I believe we're made to build, to steward, and to carry real authority in whatever sector we've been placed in. And I also believe what I just quoted there, Proverbs 22:3, both of those are true at the same time. So the plans I'm putting in place, they're twofold. One, defensive for a time of inflation, restrictions, and bureaucratic overreach. The second, position for the upside in the season the money is actually moving. So, I believe right now some of the best and most exciting times in history are about to roll out. The question is whether wealth changes hands. It's who's ready to receive it. So it's going to change hands. We know that the wealth will change hands. But it's who is ready to receive that wealth is the actual key. All right, so the people who get ready early, let's have a look at what some of our students have done with it. This is really exciting. Now, I've got to say this before I get to the next few slides. Results shared in this video are the experience of the individuals concerned. They are not typical, they're not promised, they're not guaranteed. Past performance is not a reliable indicator of future performance, and trading and investing carry risk, including the risk of loss. I just want to be upfront about that, okay? And again, we're an education company, okay? We don't tell people general specific advice. Every figure that follows is a date-stamped amount a student reported to me. I don't see inside anyone's trading account, okay? I'm not peering in or anything like that. It's just simply what they've told me, okay? So I can only go by that. And two different courses, two different kinds of results, okay? The one that we're talking about now is Prepare to Prosper, how the system is changing and what getting ready actually involves. Its outcomes look like structure and readiness, not percentages per se. We also do a 20 weeks advanced options trading course, and that's about learning the markets on traditional finance on the stock exchange, and a separate course entirely where a percentage appears in the next few minutes. That's where that one came from, just to be upfront with you here. Some students have done both. Okay, they've got a twofold thing going on, and I'm not going to blur them together because the honest version is more useful than the tidy one. Okay, it'd be easy for you, they've done this and this, but let's make that distinction here, okay? So let's have a look. Readiness doesn't show up as a percentage. This is what the Prepare to Prosper course has produced. Sylvia set her affairs up for changing financial system and for a financial emergency as taught in the course. Then you've got Travis and Lawan. They restructured where and how they live. They did the Prepare to Prosper course, relocated overseas in 2025 was their objective, and in the process of becoming residents of Panama. Neither of that's a return, just to be upfront, but both of them, this is life-changing stuff for them. This is the thing this course is actually for, being in a chosen position rather than a default one, all right? Now, in their own accounts, in their own words, Lawan said, reported 5 times her money in the months after completing Prepare to Prosper in November 2024. Junaid, he did our trading stuff. In May 2024, reported a $630,000 return on a single trade, a 450% return. In September 2025, reported his account was up over 80% over 6 months. All right, that's with what he'd learned in our 20 weeks option training course. Sylvia reported a 36% gain between 20th September 2024 and 29th of January 2025. In October of 2025, she kept one trade open on holiday and reported a 292% return on it. Travis in 2024 reported about $1,400 a week on roughly $40,000 in capital and over 108% across 6 months. And if you want to have a look at those testimonies, you can, particularly Junaid's. It's a video attached at our blueskyfactory.com/success stories. You can get that on the toolbar from our homepage at blueskyfactory.com. So that's what's going on there. There's a separation between them, but this is what they've been empowered to learn. And the part that most people leave out, they're self-reported. All right, students told me this. I don't audit anyone's account. I can't verify them for you, just to be upfront with you. A single trade is not a year. One 450% trade says nothing about the 12 months around it. He had to sit there for 2 years in that one particular trade he reported to me. All right, so that's important to understand. And these are ones I've heard about. People tend to ring me when it's going well. I don't always hear about every trade, and neither do you. So just putting those framework around it. Now, I'd rather you enroll knowing that than find out afterwards, okay? All right, let's have a look at Prepare to Prosper in particular, understanding the times you're in and where this wealth transfer kind of fits in with the preparedness of that. You can see the two parts there, prepared to prosper. Check this out. By the end, this is what you're going to come away with in doing the course. You're going to understand how the system is actually changing in plain terms, okay? I'm not going to assume you know all of this. And we're not going to mix it up with all the jargon. You can learn some jargon along the way, the pieces that are moving in the whole financial system and why they're moving now. And there's a window of opportunity as these things are becoming now. What it means for ordinary savings, how the changes reach a normal household, not just an institution. What custody really involves, what holding your own keys asks of you, what it protects you from, okay? And the risks involved in that as well. How the prepared positions themselves, okay? What people who study these seasons look at, and what I'm doing myself, so you can use me as a bit of a case study in terms of what's going on. This course is a case study of what I've done to prepare. Again, education, not advice. Nothing here tells you what to buy, sell, or hold. I'm never going to do that to you, okay? It's just a case study of what I'm doing. A transfer like this, though, and this is what we've got to recognize, doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for anybody to feel ready. It just moves. And afterwards, some people are holding something, and some people are holding nothing. And I think that's really important to understand with the swings in the market as well. It's incredibly volatile at times. And so for me, I accept that. I go, I'm parking this. I'm going to live through a lot of volatility, and I'm going to be okay with that because of other things outside of that that have protections in place. And this is what I show and demonstrate in the Prepare to Prosper course. So where are you positioned while it happens? Have a look. All right. You can get more information at blueskyfactory.com/prepare-to-prosper. blueskyfactory.com/prepare-to-prosper. Stored up for somebody means somebody has to be in a position to receive that. That's stewardship. That's the distinction here. Stored up for, let me repeat that. Stored up for somebody means somebody has to be in a position to receive it. That's stewardship. That's understanding the times you're in. And again, Blue Sky Factory, it's an education company. We're not a licensed financial planner, accountant, for lawyer. Nothing here is advice for your situation. Investing and trading carry risk, including the risk of loss. Please see someone licensed for advice specific to you, okay? This is about education. Have a look. We'd love to see you. blueskyfactory.com/prepare-to-prosper. Whatever you do your life purpose. It's really, really important that you do that. And that's what every course is designed for you to do. For you, for money to serve you rather than you serve it. I look forward to seeing you in Prepare to Prosper.